All right, and we are back. We had our session last Thursday, and it went rather well. The players made some really good rolls, and well, I guess you'll find out. Let's get into our Thursday D&D game. All right, so we left off with the majority of the party, Pickles, Mycelia, and Athalia, all locked in a prison cell at the very edge of the ziggurat. Jeff, mostly ignored by the bullywugs, has been given free rein to just kind of wander about the ziggurat. And after the bullywugs cage the three other players, Jeff decides to follow the two bullywug druids down the hallways and into another chamber. This is a larger chamber, massive. There's 12 doors total, with one massive door, 30 by 30, this large arch. The entire room is made out of these specially cut brown marbled stones, whereas the outer edge of the ziggurat, where everyone else is being kept, is still in mud brick. The two bullywug druids that he follows, they head on down to the center of the room, where there are about a dozen other bullywugs waiting, and they're down there and they're having this kind of discourse. Unfortunately, he can't make out what they're saying, but it's not long after there's a loud thud and a loud croak coming from this massive 30 by 30 portal on the far side of the room, and it scares the bullywugs so much that they all take off. They all leave, and the two bullywugs that he had followed walk right past him. And even though he tried to dip back and hide and stay out of their sight, they walk right past him, seeing him, but still fleeing from whatever this noise was. Realizing that if they're running from it and they know what it is, then he should definitely run from it, not knowing what it is. So he makes it back. And mind you, this is close to the end of the day, because the group has been detained for most of the day while they were trying to find each other through town. Remember, they had got captured by this group of frogfolk who were dragging this massive snake through town. So the rest of the group, it's late in the day, they're sitting in this cell that the bullywugs, well, the door has a lock, and it is a metal door. It is a prison cell of sorts. While the door has a lock, the door hasn't been locked. Bullywugs simply aren't intelligent enough to lock the door. So the three players are unconscious in this room, and outside of this room, there's this massive snake that they had been drugged down with. The snake is dead, so they don't have to worry about that. But Jeff is able to take a long rest, and then we start back up the next day. The three players awake from being unconscious with 1 hit point, but they have not yet taken a long rest, so they don't have any of their abilities back. Jeff has opted to stay in the cell with the other players during the long rest, just to be able to keep an eye on them and to be within hand's reach just in case something should happen. So they all awake early in the morning to bullywugs re-entering the ziggurat. There's 6 bullywug soldiers and the 2 frogfolk druids. And immediately, the soldiers begin dragging the snake down the hallway that Jeff had followed the druids down previously. And the 2 bullywug druids stay behind And it's at this point that the players decide it is time to make their move. And the whole group basically starts with Jeff making an attempt to heal. Was it Athalia? Yeah, making a move to heal Athalia. The Bullywugs have access to healing magic, being druids, so they recognize that something is going on. And with this heal, we roll right into initiative. What's really funny here is none of my players rolled higher than a 10 on their initiative. Absolutely hilarious. So I get the fun opportunity for these Bullywug druids to start combat. And boy, do they start combat. The first druid casts Entangle, ensnaring Mycelia and Jeff, which is pretty impressive considering Jeff has a pretty decent strength score. And then the other Bullywug druid casts Thunderwave, dealing a pretty fair, respectable amount of damage. Jeff is able to break free. Like I said, he has a good strength score, and then he starts moving towards the door to get closer to the Bullywugs. And keep in mind, it is rough terrain, so he's only got half movement, and from where he was in the cell, he couldn't make it the full round, make it outside the cell in that full round. Athalia moves over to heal Mycelia, because Athalia has regained some hit points, but Mycelia, remember, and Pickles, they're both still at 1. So she heals Mycelia up a little bit, and Pickles downs one of the fruits that he had found, which I gave the fruits a 1d4 healing property, and then he uses Bardic Inspiration. I forget on who. Either way, Mycelia produces one of her spears and tries to cut herself out of the Entangle spell, but doesn't succeed. I'm looking, the spear deals piercing damage, and I'm looking specifically for slashing damage to cut through. The next move goes to the druids, who use Ice Knife on Mycelia and Athalia, and this deals enough damage to down Athalia. And they then Thorn Whip on Jeff. Jeff moves over, frees Athalia. I'm sorry. Jeff moves over, frees Mycelia. Athalia's down. She's gone down right next to Mycelia. And after freeing Mycelia, Jeff makes his way back to get out of the cell. Pickles, wash, rinse, repeat, eats another fruit to get some hit points and gives another Bardic Inspiration. Athalia at this point is making death saving throws, and I believe her first one she makes. And then Mycelia, finally broken free, follows Jeff out. Fortunately, Mycelia can fly, so she's able to make some pretty good ground. With Jeff and Mycelia finally getting out of the cell and putting some pressure up onto the druids simply cast Fog Cloud, and Poison Spray in a last-ditch effort to get away. And with the... Oh man, Fog Cloud. What a great spell. I cannot recommend Fog Cloud enough, especially my players are currently only 2nd level. They'll be gaining a level very, very soon. We've already discussed this. But Fog Cloud was an amazing spell. It basically treats the area as heavily obscured, which means if you're in it, you're blinded. You attack at disadvantage, and you can't cast spells that require line of sight. Fog Cloud is awesome. So, if you're a DM like me, and you've got a low-level group, I consider it. It can also put a damper on higher-level parties. That's one thing I'm going to be looking forward to running with my Saturday group, which is currently running about 8th level. I have one player character who's 14th level, but I'm eager to see how Fog Cloud performs against a higher level party. That said, the druids are able to they're able to utilize Fog Cloud effectively, and instead of hopping off in the same direction, they split. One going north, one going south effectively. And the group, once they're able to get out of the fog cloud, they bag Athalia. Jeff had made a bag of holding on his prior long rest, and so they stick Athalia in it with her head out, which is important. Keep that in mind, people. If you want to bag your players, make sure they have oxygen. And they begin to try to follow these bullywugs down and hunt down these druids. But as they head down the southern path, they hear the soldiers whom had been dragging the snake down. The druid went and got them, and now they're all coming back. And the group realizes that we are in no condition to fight. We've got one party member down. We're all low on hit points. Aside from Jeff, we're really low on resources, and even Jeff is running low on spell slots. So what they decide to do is to flee. And I let the players know, okay, we're going to perform an escape skill challenge. I have Athalia's player who she's down. She can't do much right now, so I have her roll a d10, and she rolls a 9, and that's how many checks we're going to make. If you get more successes than you do failures, you will escape from these bullywugs. But they could catch up to you, and if you have more failures than successes, that's that. They'll have recaught you. And now they might be a little wiser to Jeff, honestly. I didn't quite say that, but these druids saw Jeff healing. They understand what's going on here. So pursuit begins. For this system, I have one player rolling an escape check contested by my catch check. So that's 2 contested d20s, flat rolls. I've got another player rolling a perception check as they escape to see if there's anything that they can utilize in their escape, or to see if there's anything that's going to hinder them. And speaking of help or hinder, I have the other player rolling a d6, because for each round that they scramble and run through the ziggurat and through the town, they might encounter stuff on their way. And that's what this d6 is going to symbolize. Now, they roll rather well. They get a crit on one escape check, and I let them know that equals 2 successes. They're making pretty good ground, but they fail the next 2. And they're 4 and 4, and the d6 had just come up as a 6, and so I let them know that, well, you've come across a storeroom. You recognize this, Pickles, from one of the ones you had previously found. Now you have a choice. Do you guys want to try to escape, or do you want to try to hide? And so I have the group vote rather quickly on what they want to do. They can try to escape, and if they fail this check, the bullywugs will have caught them. Or they can try to hide, and then I would have a group stealth check versus the bullywug's investigation. They opt to hide, and this was actually a very good decision. So I do a group stealth check. I take the 3 players' rolls, and I add their rolls all together. I believe it came to 40, mid-40s or something, was the some of their 3 rolls. However, there are 7 bullywugs investigating. But what's really fun is that the bullywugs have a -2 to their intelligence. So I roll 70 20s, and I do remember that I rolled a 2 and 2 3s, and I think a 7. So I didn't roll that great for the bullywugs. But with their cumulative negative, basically of a -14, because each bullywug's -2 would stack, resulting ultimately in a -14 to their roll. I don't think they cleared 30. No, I don't believe they even made it to mid-20s. So the bullywugs fail to find them, and they spend a few hours searching for the players, and it takes a few hours. After about 3 hours, they can finally hear the croaks of these bullywugs finally leaving the area. So finally, Free asks the players, okay, what do you want to do? So this storeroom, specifically designed for food, it has some chamber pots that have been set into the floor, and they open them up, and inside is this goopy, slimy fungi or algae or whatever that they've previously witnessed the bullywugs eating. It's really snotty, really gross. There's some more of these fruits that they've been eating to heal, and there's some large dead bugs. But there is a small second floor to this storeroom, and this is like a little loft area. And so there's no windows down on the storeroom level, so two of them, Jeff and Pickles, go up to the loft, and they're peering out to see if the coast is clear to leave. And it's at this point that bullywugs attempt to open the door. Mycelia dives from one of these vats in the floor that's filled with this slime, while Athalia moves to the door to bar the bullywugs from entering. And after some funny rolls, Athalia gets knocked down just as Jeff arrives to help her keep the door shut. Mycelia has got herself all covered in slime and goop, and oh man, it was they managed to kill off these 2 bullywugs, these 2 frogfolk commoners, who are just trying to get in to grab a bite to eat, apparently. But as they drop one of the bullywugs, Jeff downs it with a firebolt, and it singes and sears this frogfolk, and the other one immediately begins trying to consume it. Yeah, they kind of roll like that. And the players are a bit horrified. They're like, what? What? We did not expect that. So they're able to dispatch this other frogfolk pretty quickly. And they figure, well, we need to get out of here before anyone else comes. So they leave the storehouse, having grabbed up some of these fruits. One of my lights just went out. Oh, I think everything's fine. So they find their way around the border of this town and make their way back to the coast. Remember, they are on a sunken island. They find their way back to the coast, this giant moat that circles, and they navigate it back down to where the rope is still hanging in the water. But on the way there, they notice that the ground down below down around the ziggurat is moving in waves, and they realize that this is, and my light's back on. Look at that. But they notice that this waves in the land down by the ziggurat is bullywugs This is a massive congregation of frogfolk. And they can hear this giant croak, this loud ribbit coming from the ziggurat. And so deciding that it's definitely not worth staying, they make it out to the beach. But when they make it out, it's evening. And the water is blood red. So, understandably, not wanting to go into the water, Mycelia flies over to the cliff line because the rope is still there, and she grabs the rope because she can fly. She flies over, grabs the rope, brings it back, and this is 250-foot stretch of rope. And they tie it off to another one of the trees down by the coastline. And they're like, perfect, we're all set. We are going to get out of here. And so they start to go up the rope. They send Jeff first. They send the 400-pound Warforged first up the rope. And so on the other side of the screen, I make a check to see if the rope is going to hold. And because Jeff is so heavy, it doesn't. It's a 100-foot rope. I roll my percentiles to see where the rope is going to break. And of course, I roll up right in the center. And so that's where the rope breaks. That's where Jeff is at when it snaps. And he falls. He falls about 30 feet, takes a pretty substantial amount of damage. It was about half his hit points in damage. And hitting the red water, he immediately gets sucked down into it because the current's not flowing easily like it had been when they descended. No, the current is flowing rather aggressively. Panicking because Jeff gets sucked down into the depths right away. Panicking, Pickles takes out his book and he asks it, "What do we do? Where do we go?" And the book replies, writing at the top, it replies, "Through the under." What's the under, you might ask? Well, I have a fun little place that I have referred to in some of my other videos. But that's not all that the book has written. And I described to him that the book responds in typical book fashion. The book starts, and all its replies at the top of the page, writing from the left to the right. Starting at the top, longer replies would work down. And I tell him, you would almost have missed this. But there is a very small, fine letter reply at the very bottom of the page. It's upside down. And it's writing from the right to the left. So you have to flip it over to read it. And it reads, "Through the downside." I don't know if you have gone through my channel and seen any more of my videos, but I highly encourage you to do so because there is another video that I put out regarding the downside and what might be there. Regardless, that is where we end the session. I'm very excited for this Thursday. Looking forward to seeing how my players will react, because the book's not done. There's more. And I have been speculating on just where Jeff is going to wind up, because he's not done either. I like to run my games a little loose. It's hard to know exactly where your players are going to go and exactly what they're going to do and what they might encounter. And I often like to build my adventures backwards by putting out a question without necessarily having an answer for it. And I think that's a very good way to build an adventure, especially when you have a week to prepare for the next session. Or, 2 weeks, however you run your schedule. But simply making a statement at the time is generally sufficient for you to keep the flow of the game going forward. And when you take time off of the game, it's in that point where you can spend your thoughts on answering what, when, how, and why of those statements that you made. It's perfect for cities. It's perfect for histories, for NPCs. You can use it almost anywhere, and it's one of the things that I really like to do. I don't always have everything perfectly laid out. I might have a general idea, but sometimes you need to wait just a little bit for that perfect thing to hit. I hope you've enjoyed this recap. We'll find out where they wind up and what they do. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day. Is it Thursday yet?